These are the richest black families that own Brooklyn, and they only get crazier as we move. We're talking a family that turned a Liberian war refugee story into a $250 million real estate empire, a dynasty that clerked for Thurgood Marshall before quietly becoming the man BlackRock paid $12.5 billion for, and an empire that started in the Marcy Projects and ended with the most expensive home sale in California history. 8 families. 8 dramatic stories. Let's begin. Number 8. The Peebles Dynasty, the most politically connected real estate family in Brooklyn. Don Peebles has spent 3 decades projecting one of the most carefully curated images in American real estate: the ultimate self-made black developer, bi-coastal lifestyle, Hamptons properties, CNBC appearances, a name that appears near every significant public-private bid in New York City. The projection is partly real and partly strategy, which makes the Peebles story one of the more instructive case studies in the difference between wealth as display and wealth as engine. Through the Peebles Corporation, the family has genuinely shaped high-value municipal development across Manhattan and the outer boroughs, specializing in the specific niche of converting underutilized public assets into luxury and mixed-use properties through government partnerships. That model requires political access, and Peebles has cultivated it aggressively. Close relationships with figures from Bill Clinton to Barack Obama to Kamala Harris, serious fundraising activity at the national level, and a public profile that keeps his name at the table when the biggest contracts are being discussed. His son, Donahue Peebles III, has been deliberately groomed as the dynasty's next operator, with his own role as CEO of legacy real estate development focused specifically on affordable housing, which is both a genuinely pressing need and a smart positioning play for a family whose primary business requires continued access to city and state partnerships. The honest complexity in the Peebles story is the gap between the projected wealth and the audited reality. A 2012 certified audit cited in a legal dispute with a former partner placed the corporation's liquid net worth at approximately $20 million, substantially lower than the public projection of an empire. The asset structure is highly illiquid, meaning the value is real but tied up in development projects rather than accessible capital. In real estate, that's not unusual. But it does explain why richest is a complicated word for a dynasty whose actual firepower lives more in access and pipeline than in liquid holdings. And that distinction matters when you're trying to understand how Brooklyn's wealthiest families actually operate versus how they present. Number 7. The Bayoh Dynasty, $250 million empire that feeds the entire neighborhood. Adena Bayoh arrived in the United States at 13 years old, leaving Liberia with no luggage and no money during one of West Africa's most brutal civil conflicts. She grew up in public housing in Newark's South Ward, worked her way through a corporate banking career, bought her first investment property at 22 using cash flow from that job, and then kept compounding from there until the portfolio crossed $250 million and the industry started paying attention. Her development model through Foya Development Group is genuinely different from the standard affordable housing developer playbook, and the difference is worth understanding. Rather than building residential units and moving on, Bayoh embeds commercial businesses directly into the ground floors of her developments: her own IHOP franchises, her cornbread soul food restaurants, her Brick City vegan concept, creating a closed loop where the building generates housing and the commercial activity generates community employment and foot traffic simultaneously. Since 2012, she has developed 373 rental units, 251 of which are deeply restricted affordable housing, financed through federal low-income housing tax credits, with active projects running across Newark, Atlantic City, and the broader New York-New Jersey corridor. She was the first black woman in New Jersey to secure a 9% NJHMFA affordable housing tax credit, and she sits on the Federal Reserve Bank of New York's Advisory Council on Small Business and Agriculture, which is the kind of appointment that tells you the institutional establishment has noticed that her model works. What makes the Bayoh dynasty compelling beyond the portfolio is the fact that she is visibly, deliberately building in the same kind of communities she came from, and the business model is specifically designed to make those communities more economically stable, rather than simply more expensive to live in. Number 6. The Stoute Dynasty, the man who turned a Brooklyn beauty brand into a national phenomenon. Steve Stoute's career reads like someone who understood, earlier than almost everyone around him, that culture was the most underpriced asset in the American economy, and then spent 3 decades systematically monetizing that insight. He started as a music executive, managing Nas and Mary J. Blige, and serving as president of urban music at Sony, before pivoting to advertising through Translation, the marketing agency he founded in 2004 that has since run campaigns for McDonald's, Samsung, Reebok, and Procter & Gamble. The McDonald's angle is specifically worth noting. Stoute was the person who connected Pusha T to write the "I'm Lovin' It" melody that Justin Timberlake ultimately performed, a campaign that became one of the most recognized advertising jingles in the world, orchestrated by a man who understood that hip-hop's cultural reach had grown far beyond what the mainstream advertising industry was willing to pay for. His most structurally significant Brooklyn chapter is Carol's daughter. Lisa Price founded the beauty brand in her Brooklyn kitchen, built it into a beloved local institution, and then watched Steve Stoute walk in with $1 million for a 50% stake in 2005 before assembling an investor group including Jay-Z, LeBron James, Will and Jada Pinkett Smith, and Mary J. Blige. He grew the brand from $6 million to $27 million in annual revenue, expanded distribution into Target and Macy's, and sold it to L'Oreal in 2014. The exit converted a Brooklyn kitchen project into a nationally distributed consumer brand within a decade, which is as clean a private equity story as the beauty industry has produced. His combined household net worth with wife and television personality, Dorinda Medley, sits around $75 million, and his current primary focus is United Masters, a music distribution platform he launched in 2017 with $70 million from Alphabet and Andreessen Horowitz, designed to let independent artists distribute to streaming services while retaining their masters. In a music industry that has historically extracted ownership from artists at the point of entry, United Masters is specifically designed to close that gap, which, given Stoute's career arc, is either principled or very strategic about where the music industry is heading. Probably both. Number 5. The Adams Dynasty, running a $6 billion pipeline of buildings in Brooklyn. Jamar Adams is not a name that appears in lifestyle profiles or on real estate reality shows, and that anonymity is essentially the story. He runs Essence Development, which he founded in 2020, with an active development pipeline valued at over $6 billion, one of the largest Black-owned real estate development pipelines in the country. And he manages that number with the operational discipline of someone who came up through the institutional side of the industry rather than the entrepreneurial side. Before launching Essence, Adams spent years as vice president of New York development at Related Companies, one of the most powerful real estate firms in the country, where he personally negotiated over $800 million in transactions and oversaw the construction and rehabilitation of approximately 5,000 affordable housing units across New York City. That institutional pedigree is what allows him to do at Essence what most independent Black developers cannot: close at scale with Wall Street capital partners and municipal agencies simultaneously, because he has already demonstrated inside one of the industry's most credentialed organizations that he knows how to execute. His core business is NYCHA's PACT program, the Permanent Affordability Commitment Together initiative that transitions public housing developments out of the underfunded federal public housing system and into private management structures that unlock capital for large-scale physical rehabilitation. Current Essence projects include the Fulton and Elliott Chelsea houses, the Seward Park extension, and the Hernandez houses, each representing the kind of rehabilitation work that directly determines whether Brooklyn's working-class residents have functional, dignified housing or continue cycling through deferred maintenance and deteriorating infrastructure. The $6 billion pipeline is not abstract. It is the physical reality of thousands of apartments being either improved or left to decline, and Adams is currently on the right side of that decision. Number 4. The Keller Dynasty, converting Brooklyn church land into affordable housing. Erica Keller runs Brisa Builders Corp. Out of Brooklyn, which her parents Thomas and Lily Keller founded in 1997. And the development model she inherited and expanded is specific enough to deserve a full explanation because it is genuinely creative. Brisa's core strategy involves partnering with historical Brooklyn churches, institutions that own valuable land acquired over generations but lack the development capital to put it to productive use, and structuring transactions that convert that dormant land into deeply affordable housing while providing the church with a financial return and a continued community anchor on the property. It is a model that works precisely because it requires trust, and churches in Brooklyn's working-class communities have spent a century building the kind of trust that a developer without deep local roots simply cannot manufacture. The flagship project is Ebenezer Plaza in East Flatbush, developed in partnership with the Church of God of East Flatbush. Phase 1A alone represents a $154 million investment. Phase 1B is another $75 million. Add the $45 million Bishop Phileas and Helene Nicholas Sr. residences and the $51.7 million supportive housing development at 19-19 Cornaga Avenue in Far Rockaway, and Breeze's total developed portfolio sits at over $310 million. With an active pre-development pipeline exceeding 2,500 units, representing an additional $220 million in committed capital. The detail that most clearly communicates Keller's operating philosophy is her decision to hire a Black-owned title insurance firm to execute transactions totaling $310 million in affordable housing closings. Title insurance is the kind of back-office transaction that most developers outsource to whoever is most convenient. Keller specifically redirected that fee income into a Black-owned institution, which is the kind of circular capital deployment that is easy to talk about and rare to actually execute at scale. It suggests a developer who has thought carefully not just about what she's building, but about who gets paid in the process of building it. Number 3. The Ogunlesi Dynasty, the Ghost of Wall Street. Adebayo Ogunlesi's biography reads like it was constructed to make everyone else feel moderately underachieving. Born in Nigeria as the son of the country's first professor of medicine, he earned degrees from Oxford and Harvard before clerking for Supreme Court Justice Thurgood Marshall, which is the kind of credential that opens exactly one category of door in American institutional life. He then spent 23 years at Credit Suisse before walking away in 2006 to co-found Global Infrastructure Partners, a New York-based private equity firm focused on energy, transport, digital infrastructure, and waste management that grew to manage over $100 billion in assets. In January 2024, BlackRock agreed to acquire GIP for approximately $12.5 billion, structured with $3 billion in cash and 12 million shares of BlackRock stock. Ogunlesi joined BlackRock's board of directors following the transaction and simultaneously serves as lead independent director at Goldman Sachs. 2 board seats at 2 of the most consequential financial institutions in the world, held by the same person at the same time. And the city barely notices because Ogunlesi does not seek the kind of attention that would make the noticing happen. His family foundation holds over $26 million in assets and distributes nearly $1 million annually to institutions including the Studio Museum in Harlem, Sponsors for Educational Opportunity, and the Smithsonian National Museum. His son Jeffrey is a prominent music executive engaged to jewelry designer Jennifer Meyer, and his son Carl is a working music producer, suggesting a family that has deliberately cultivated range across finance, culture, and creative industries rather than confining the next generation to the lane that produced the primary fortune. That kind of succession thinking is what separates dynasties from one-generation wealth events. Number 2. The Smith Dynasty. They own the house. Madam C.J. Walker built. Robert F. Smith is the wealthiest Black American, and the way he got there is specific enough to be worth understanding rather than just citing. He founded Vista Equity Partners in 2000 after leaving Goldman Sachs, built it around a single thesis. Enterprise software companies are utilities. They have recurring revenue, they are structurally recession-resistant, and nobody was buying them with the operational discipline they deserved, and executed that thesis with approximately 31% annualized returns across 25 years and a portfolio now managing over $107 billion in assets across more than 90 companies employing over 100,000 people globally. His New York footprint is the physical expression of what that compounding looks like. He maintains a triplex Manhattan penthouse with a rooftop swimming pool, which is already an extraordinary real estate statement, and he also owns Villa Lewaro, the 20,000-square-foot historic estate in Irvington, New York, originally built by Madam C.J. Walker, the first self-made female millionaire in American history. Owning the house that the first self-made black female millionaire built is either a coincidence or a statement about historical continuity, and knowing what we know about how deliberately Smith constructs his life, it is almost certainly the latter. In 2019, he stood at Morehouse College's commencement and told the graduating class he would personally pay off every dollar of their student loan debt. A $34 million commitment made in the middle of a speech, delivered without theatrical buildup, and paid in full. He followed it by establishing the Student Freedom Initiative to provide debt relief for HBCU and minority-serving institution students on an ongoing basis. The 2020 DOJ settlement, $139 million over offshore tax accounts, sits in the same biography as the Morehouse Pledge, held by the same man. And the tension between those two facts is more interesting than either one alone, because it refuses to let the story be simple. Smith is not a simple story. He is a $10 billion private equity operation with a genuine philanthropic philosophy and a complicated human record. And that complexity is exactly what makes him worth understanding. Number 1. The Carter Dynasty. From the Marcy Projects to the most expensive home sale in California history, the Carter family's story is the one that Brooklyn tells about itself when it wants to believe in what's possible, because the distance between the starting point and the ending point is so extreme that it functions almost as proof of concept for the idea that geography is not destiny. Shawn Carter grew up in the Marcy Projects in Bedford-Stuyvesant, one of Brooklyn's most underfunded public housing developments during the height of the crack epidemic. And he now owns a stake in the Barclays Center, the $1 billion sports and entertainment arena built in downtown Brooklyn, which means he went from living in the projects to owning a piece of the most prominent building his neighborhood can see. His personal net worth is estimated at $2.8 billion, built across a business empire that is genuinely more sophisticated than the celebrity wealth category most people would place it in. Roc Nation, headquartered in Soho, is a full-service entertainment company representing elite athletes and artists at the global level. Marcy Capital Partners, formed in 2024 through the merger of his Marcy Venture Partners with the investment arm of Pendulum Holdings, manages a multi-billion AUM portfolio deploying into direct-to-consumer brands and scaling operations into Asian markets. The luxury spirits portfolio includes Armand de Brignac, Champagne, and Douce Cognac. The proposed Caesars Palace Times Square casino development, structured as a $5.4 billion project, would put him and co-partner Ryan Williams at the center of one of the most consequential real estate transactions in Manhattan's recent history. Beyoncé's independent financial operation is its own story entirely. Parkwood Entertainment controls the production, distribution, and economics of her creative output, with an ownership structure that captures the majority of gross revenue from every venture rather than the minority that traditional label arrangements produce. The Renaissance World Tour grossed over $500 million. Her real estate portfolio includes the $200 million Malibu oceanfront mansion, the most expensive residential home sale in California history, and a $26 million East Hampton estate on Georgia Pond. The combined Carter household operates at well over $3 billion, and the philosophy governing how it moves is explicit. Build ownership into every deal, circulate capital back through the Black community, and buy the blocks you grew up on. Their oldest daughter, Blue Ivy, has already appeared in Vogue, performed globally, and won a Grammy, at an age when most children are still negotiating bedtimes. She is being raised inside one of the most deliberately constructed wealth architectures in modern American history by two people who came from nothing and decided that nothing was not a starting point they were willing to pass forward. And there you are, 8 dynasties with 8 completely different ways of understanding what Brooklyn produces when the conditions are right and the ambition is real. From a Liberian refugee buying her first property at 22 to the man BlackRock paid $12.5 billion for, to a kid from the Marcy Projects who now owns a piece of the arena his neighborhood is named after. Brooklyn's wealthiest Black families are not a story about luck or access. They are a story about equity, architecture, and the specific kind of stubbornness that refuses to let the starting line be the finish line. Which one of these stories impressed you the most? Let us know in the comments, and for more such interesting peeks into how Black families are ruling America, take a look at Black status.